Good evening. Today is Thursday, January 23rd, 2025. I'd like to call this meeting of the Auburn City Council to order. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilor Kent.
Here.
Councilor Overstreet Wilson.
Here.
Councilor Cuddy.
Here.
Councilor Calarco.
Here.
Mayor Jimmy Giannettino.
Here, please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silent prayer or reflection. Thank you. Please be seated. Before we get into public announcements, this evening was supposed to be the swearing in for Chief Andrasco. Unfortunately, he and his family are ill this evening, so we're going to have to postpone that to a later date. Public announcements?
Thank you, Mayor. We do have a few announcements this evening. I just want to remind everybody that next week is the 5th Thursday of the month. There will be no council meeting next week. We do have upcoming meetings. Monday, January 27th will be the next meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals for the City of Auburn. The Zoning Board of Appeals meeting will be held at 7 p.m. here at Council Chambers, 24 South Street. And then the next Planning Board meeting for the City of Auburn will be held on Tuesday, February 4th at 6:30 p.m. here in Council Chambers, 24 South Street. And then want to remind the council and the public that 2 weeks from tonight, February 6th, in front of council will be a public hearing to be held at the regular meeting of the City Council 5 p.m. for the purpose of collecting citizen input concerning the Community Development Block Grant Program proposed 2025-29, 2025 through 2029 Consolidated Planning Strategy, and the 2025-26 Community Development Block Grant Program Year Annual Action Plan. The public hearing will be held as part of the regular City Council meeting, and that's 2 weeks from tonight on February 6th. Thanks.
Thank you. Moving on to public to be heard.
At this point in time, we will open the public to be heard portion of the council meeting. Residents are asked to state their name and address for the record. Please keep remarks to 3 minutes or less, and please observe commonly accepted rules of courtesy and decorum.
Is there anybody wishing to be heard this evening? Hearing none, we'll close the public to be heard and move on to the approval of the meeting minutes from January 16th. Do we have a sponsor? Councilor Kent, second by Councilor Calarco. Any questions, discussions, changes? Please call the roll.
Councilor Kent.
Yes.
Councilor Overstreet Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Cuddy.
Present.
Councilor Calarco.
Aye.
Mayor Jimmy Giannettino.
Aye.
Carried.
City Manager's report. Mr. Dygert.
Thank you, Mayor. Just reminders of some things we've had on for several weeks. We are still accepting applications for the data analyst position for the Auburn Police Department. This position is provisional. No test date has yet been set by New York State. Civil Service has also scheduled a test for entry-level firefighters. Test is scheduled for March 1st of 2025. Interested individuals must sign up by January 30th, either online or in person here at City Hall. We are currently accepting proposals under a request for qualifications for a firm to conduct an Owasco Lake subwatershed stream corridor assessment. Responses are due back February 7th. We're also accepting responses to an RFQ for legal services regarding energy investment tax credits. The responses for that are due back on February 14th. And once again, we've put out a call for proposals, and this time split up the dog control services into separate proposals, potentially for dog control services and separately kenneling services. Responses to either or both of those are due back on February 12th. And just a reminder that February 3rd, the Hoops Pond Park Restoration Project is slated to officially begin. Residents will experience some equipment mobilization and things like that in the time between now and then. Public Works Department has hand delivered to the surrounding neighborhood basically a rundown of what that schedule looks like, what they can expect. And as I mentioned last week, we'll do our best to keep things, everybody updated, including the council and the public through the webpage. And lastly, kind of along the same lines as Hoops Park, is just in case you happen to get a phone call. Today, some of the light poles, or the light poles, were taken down at Clifford Field. Those light poles had been in existence for a long time, had been non-functional for approximately 20 years, and have been removed. There are some light pole stumps there currently, I'm told, and those will be removed, weather permitting, and the surface restored when spring hits. That's all.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Duggar? Reports from members of council? Hearing none. We will move on to presentation for this evening. Solid waste fund components. Mr. Talbot from the Superintendent of Public Works, and Ms. Leeson, our comptroller. Welcome.
We got to us quickly tonight.
Hey, Mike, is there any chance we can sell parts of those light poles like they sold the seats out of Yankee Stadium?
Possibly. I mean, we had to section them off, so
Okay.
each pole is
All right.
probably
All right.
six
Never-
different
never know.
sections. But just for everybody's information, that's been on our radar for a while. And it just so happened it's been so cold and the ground was frozen, we have to get a loader out there. We did a test run last week and it just wasn't frozen, so we waited for the cold weather. Now, if you go by it, it really looks different, and, you know, I always seem to call things visual clutter sometimes, even though they served a purpose back in the day. We haven't used those fields in a while. So what they were doing was really kind of, you know, subdividing the property there. So when you go there now, you'll see just a nice open green space there that really, I think the community will benefit much more from an open space than having to run around poles. So they were an issue. We had some of the light fixtures had fallen actually on a couple of the poles, which is dangerous. So no, we brought the section poles are stored down the landfill right now until we can figure out what to do with them. They're not creosote, they're cedar, so they're not even coated with creosote, so they can be reused. So when we scrapped, you know, all the metal components of the light fixtures went into our scrap bin down there. So really nothing, no garbage was generated from it. So we'll see what we can do with it. Hope everybody understands why we did it. Like Hoops Park, Clifford Park has a long history with our community, and we understand that and we respect that. But the poles were becoming a hazard. So opens up some new opportunities. So, but tonight, what we wanted to do, and apologize that this is going to be kind of a brief presentation. Mary Beth and myself, Mary Beth was keen and saw an opening on the agenda for tonight, so we really got together a little bit last week, so we pulled this together. And what we're hoping to do with this is kind of, obviously we're coming into budget development season, so this will give us some things to think about for a solid waste fund. Our solid waste fund, as we'll see, has changed a lot over the years. So what it is now is what we wanted everyone to understand, ask questions, and fortunately, you know, Mary Beth was available tonight because the financial end, she'll be able to, I can talk all night about lifting a garbage can and pulling levers, but you know, I'm pretty boring when it comes to numbers and money, so thanks, Mary Beth. So here we go. So we called it the components. So really, it's what makes up our solid waste fund. And there's really three things in it these days. AL 8161, and all the number prefixes are solid waste, which is AL. Refuse collection. AL 8162 is refuse disposal. That's really the only title we kept from the old solid waste fund when we had a landfill. Because as we'll show you, there is still some responsibilities on the landfill itself. AL 8171 is our transfer station, and all three of those accounts are funded through our refuse collection fees and, you know, revenue generated down there. So we'll just quickly, and if anyone has any questions, please ask as we go, and I'll be happy to answer to the best of my ability. If I don't have the answer, I will definitely get it for you and get it to you. So this is 8161 refuse collection service. Everybody understands the value of our our curbside collection service, what we offer our community. So, and this account includes all the curbside collection services. So you got your garbage collection, your refuse collection, your recycling material collection. You got collection day skips, so that's if somebody has it, and we do make mistakes, and especially in the wintertime where a lot of people use white 13-gallon bags against the snowbank, they're sometimes hard to locate, especially after we've had a snow early in the morning or, you know, late at night. So all people have to do is call Jeremy down at, we still call it the landfill, but at the transfer station, and we always have a list, and we go out and get those when we do the bulk item collections, where people either pay online or come up here and pay for their bulk items. So that goes on a daily, that actually goes on 5 days a week, even though we don't collect garbage on Mondays. And the service also is Monday yard waste collection, the resident drop-off days where we have 4, 2 in the spring, 2 in the fall, and they're usually pretty well attended. This refuse collection services, also, you know, some landfill maintenance is in there with our people after they're done with the routes. And also, that's kind of our starting point for our public works staff and some municipal utilities and some city hall. That seems to be the point of entry for a lot of our staff, the way things go. Yes?
I have a question about the Monday yard waste collection. I've had people ask me, they put out yard waste and they're like, oh, did it get picked up? Do they just check every house on Mondays, or should they call? What's the best way to make sure that gets picked up if they put it out?
Well, if they put it out, and like I said, we do honestly, we call them skips, where it's probably a mistake on our part, where we just missed it for whatever reason. All they have to do is call 255-4155. And what we do is compile a list, and we don't go out and do that task until after 12 o'clock, you know, in the afternoon. So when people figure out, hey, I may have been skipped, they can call, we can add it to the list. Sometimes we just haven't been there yet. And sometimes, honestly, also, counselors, sometimes, and not that this person who called you is guilty of this, but sometimes it's their fault, where it's in a garbage can, it's not marked, or it's not on the curb, or, you know, we didn't pick it up for some reason because it didn't look like yard waste. And a lot of people seem to think, and I know I understand how the mistake can be made, where we've all tried our hands at landscaping, right? Some with good results, some with not so good results. So what looks good last year might not look good this year. So I want to redo my whole bed. But yard waste are not the landscape timbers that kind of hold everything in. That's not considered yard waste, that's garbage. So if we do see that, we can't ask our people to pull things out, and that looks worse when you're just ripping things out of a can and laying it back. So that also sometimes comes into play.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And I always like to say this, we're the only department too that visits every city home on a weekly basis. And really, if you figure, we have a garbage truck and a recycling truck, so our department visits each home at least 104 times per year. So that's a lot. And that's the kind of the value of this service that you really won't find anywhere else. Because part of our job also is to look at other communities and see how because we all have the same challenges, we do. You know, every community has similar challenges. And I'll tell you, I haven't found one yet that offers the curbside collection service that we do. And I'm not just saying it because I'm part of the process, it's a fact. So, you know, we're proud of that service. Jeremy works hard. It's not an easy job. You know, I've worked down there before. Some days you can't please anybody, but that's part of the turf. Now, here's our refuse collection staffing. Now, one thing we can never be accused of in our department here is having people standing around doing nothing. So we have one foreperson. That's Jeremy. You know, we have an account clerk. We have 5 MEO2s, which are your garbage drivers. And the reason we have 5 is we have 4 trucks out on any given day, but on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, we have a 5th truck out collecting part of the recycling route. We have 7 full-time laborers. We have 3 part-time laborers. Now, when we split with COES, the Municipal Recycling Enforcement Officer. But the part-time laborers, what we used to do is have seasonal help, which worked, but there was such a disparity in paying somebody minimum wage doing the same job as somebody who was making a little bit more. It caused a little friction. So with the collective bargaining agreement, you know, instead of seasonal, we have part-time labor. So they're in the civil service system. You know, they're not paid benefits at this time, but they have first dibs on full-time positions when they come open. And it's really, it works out well for us because, and it actually works out well for the employees too, because they can quickly figure out whether public service is for them or not. Even though it's a little specialized and they're probably doing the same thing every day on the back of the garbage truck. You know, you either are interested in working for the public or you're not. So, you know, we read through quite a bit of people. Some people don't make it through the probationary period for various reasons. So, but, you know, if you can come through and cut your teeth picking garbage, then I think you kind of understand why we're here. I always say that's why we were invented. That's why I'm standing here, because somebody needs to do this. So, you know, we're proud of that. So, does anyone have any questions on the staffing for curbside collection? And once again, remember, these are all of our, how to put it, our future servants in training, pretty much. So if you understand the, so most of our people down there now, Jeremy, what would you say? Probably an average of not more than 4 years of experience with the city. So it's important for us to do our job of making them understand why we're here. So it's difficult at times, not that they're difficult, but to try to explain different things and why we do things. So, and this is all the equipment we have. We don't have that many. It looks 7 refuse packers because we have one that acts as a gate truck down there for people who drive in with garbage. You have to have a spare, and these are the numbers. We have 2 pickup trucks, which one is what our recycling enforcement person's driving around in now. So we don't have much down there, but we have just what we need. And we have to, and thank you for Mayor and Council for always including us, and Christina and Mary Beth for the cycling in and out of equipment. Because, you know, these bigger trucks like this with the big sweeping blade, if you let them go past kind of their curve and they're on the downside, they can get a little bit costly. So you can see we have a couple of old ones, they're the spares, but it's funny, just like all of us when you buy something, sometimes you just get a truck or a car or a drill that's just made well, and they last, and people like it. So one of our older trucks is actually one of the more probably requested trucks, right? Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough truck. So, and here's our budget here. I didn't put the benefits in because that's more Mary Beth's area, but you can see right there it's 900,000, so $1 million plus benefits. And our largest expenses are salaries and benefits, fuel, vehicle and equipment maintenance, and really that's it for that department. Some PPE, but the people down there are good about, we reuse gloves, we wash them, we dry them, we reuse them. Of course, they're only good for a couple of days, but we do all we can to watch what we spend. Does anyone have any questions on 8161? It's one of our more popular, I think, services that we provide. And there's another, you can see where we are right now. So nothing real. This, if you look back over the years, this is probably one of our more consistent budget allocations also. But like I said before, we have the same challenges here as every other community and every other private business that does this service. And here's refuse disposal. So this is 8162. We kept the route number, which is 8162, simply because it's been in existence for so long, and the account title. So, and that dates back to our active landfill operations. There's no staff in this account. And this account is responsible for post-closure care of landfill number 1, closed in '92, and landfill number 2, which is closed in 2020. Now, what we're trying to do right now with landfill number 1, it's been 30 years, and they've kind of delayed. So after you close the gate, you close the landfill, you lock the gate, you're obligated for 30 years to quarterly monitor the groundwater there. which is what we've been doing for 30-something years. We're hoping to have it removed because the groundwater data doesn't show any impacts from landfill 1 on up gradient wells or down gradient, so it's not harmful at all. So we're hoping to be able to remove that from the testing. That doesn't relieve us from having to mow it and watch for trees growing. Of course, there's a solar field on it now. So, but also landfill too. We have to do the same thing, but that was just closed. So expenses are required post-closure monitoring, like I talked about, including groundwater laboratory analysis, leachate analysis, methane sampling and monitoring, and consulting fees. And actually, the annual reports, you know, I'm responsible for 5 reports every year, and that's what I'm working on this month. So you have one for the transfer station, you have one for our recycling material report, you have one for the landfill 1 and 2, you have one for our composting facility, because we're registered, that compost facility is registered. We have one for stormwater pollution detection. And like I said, there's no staff allocated in this, so the budget here is $85,300, and that includes everything you see there. Anyone have any questions on that? Yes.
So you're asking to have these tests not required any longer because of, you've had 30 years of negative results and you don't feel that we need it any longer? Is it basically?
Personally, I don't, but that's the state's decision to
Right,
make.
okay. So
You know,
and
they
that's
could
the
tell us,
process.
hey, you guys are great, go on for another 30 years. Or they might say, yes, I understand your argument, we agree with it, or maybe they'll knock us down to every other year or something.
I was gonna say, or every, like, you know, periodic checking
Yeah.
makes sense, so.
But,
And-
and honestly, Counselor, I know that this is part of your interest also. I can honestly say that we have, you know, it opened, what, landfill 1 back in the 50s. So we have 4 sampling rounds per year since 1992. And you can see there's
different
no
trash.
harm, there's no harm.
Yeah.
You know, the biggest harm we see are, let's see, I gotta get that right. It's chlorides from when we had a landfill, we'd have to salt the road going back. So any monitoring well within 30 feet of the road after the winter would, you know, test high and bad. It comes back to the road salt. So,
Okay.
you know, everything you do matters. It really does.
Oh, that makes sense, thank you.
Yeah, but I will update as soon as we hear something back from the DEC. And of course, once you get something into them, it takes a little bit. So, any other questions on refuse disposal? And there it is right there. And you'll see percent used, 28%, because now is our annual report season. So we have, you know, somebody comes out, has to see, because what you have to do is purge the well first, just to, if anyone's unaware of our monitoring wells, how they work. We have, I think there's 64 out there between the 2 landfills. Most of them are nested, meaning there's a well that's more shallow that does the upper aquifer, and then there's a well that's deeper in the screen sections in the lower aquifer. Sometimes there's 3, depending on how many aquifers out there, because it's kind of an interesting site, because part of it has some artesian pressure, so it has flowing water. So that's kind of cool, actually. But so we have, and what the sampler does is purges. You need 3 well volumes you have to purge one day. So they purge all the wells, and they come back the following day. So you draw in a good representative sample of the groundwater. So that's the whole. It's a 2-day process. So now here's our transfer station. This includes operation of the city-owned transfer station. We opened December. I don't know why I put circa. I tried to sound historical, I guess. We opened in December of 2020. So that's when we went into business with the transfer station. And we receive refuse from curbside collection, resident drive-ins, Cuba County drive-ins, city resident drop-off days. And one thing I didn't put on there was contractors. We have 2 contractors that come in also to kind of take up some of the available, we used to call airspace and landfill days, but we're allowed 12,500 tons of waste to go through our transfer station. So, and what we do with that, the refuse is delivered to us. We load it into our city-owned trailers, and then the trailers are delivered to a landfill for disposal. Currently, we go to Seneca Meadows. This is the last year. In February, we have to bid out our disposal services, so very curious where that's going to lead us. Because you really have, unless, I don't think, Okra, last time we tried to contact Okra, they weren't interested really in any waste outside Onondaga County. But, so we will have, you usually have the High Acres landfill there in Fairport, you have Ontario County and Stanley on the other side of Geneva, and you have Seneca Meadows. Those are the three that are in close proximity. There's some other options a little south of us, and we'll just have to start knocking on some doors, because obviously, the more bids you receive back, hopefully the better price you get. And here's the staffing for that. We have one weigh scale operator, we have one MEO3, and that's a person that has a Class A license, so they drive our tractors and trailers over to Seneca Meadows. We have one landfill operator that conducts business all day long, and a loader, a solid wheeled loader that kind of crushes the garbage a little bit more on the transfer station floor and then dumps it over a push wall into the trailers that are beneath. So we have 2 international tractors. Those are what pull the trailers. It's not like the tractor with a straw hat and a corncob pipe that you're driving. These are actual tractor trailers. So, and then we have the 4 walking floor trailers. We have a roll-off truck to service our own needs for roll-off boxes. That's that solid wheeled loader and a skid steer. So you can see everything was purchased in 2020 when we had nothing and we had to start it. The downside of that is probably everything will start to fail at the same time. So we have to consider that also. Everything's in good shape. The people down there do a great job of maintaining things, but that's something in the future that will be coming up. And the budget for that is, that's without benefits. So the largest expense are landfill tip fees, salaries and benefits, fuel, vehicle maintenance, and repairs. So pretty straightforward, it really is. And there it is, shown another way. Yes?
So, so if we're bidding out this year, will we know what site and how much it's gonna cost us to haul our refuse to that site before the budget is?
Yes, the
Okay.
current contract with Seneca Meadows expires June 30th.
June 30th.
So we're gonna put it out in February. We'll probably, I'll talk to Mary Beth about it, and we'll probably have them due back maybe April.
So that we need to adjust our fees.
Right, and just for kind of a economy of scale, and obviously this is what I think most contractors do that I found. And you figure the Seneca Meadows is a privately owned landfill, so they can respond to market trends a lot better than public. But the first year, we had a 3-year contract with 2 one-year extensions. The first year was $29 a ton. Right now, we're paying $43 a ton. And that's all part of the contract. And actually, that $43 a ton was still cheaper than some of the other landfill quotes we got back after years 2 or 3 or something. So curious, and we all know the struggles that Seneca Meadows is currently having with some, the politics over however we want to, they might be a little tired of the landfill business over there, that community. So
I have a technical question I just need to, so the waste from the wastewater treatment plant is sent separately. This is not factored into this.
So you're probably referring to the sludge.
The sludge, because I know
Right.
that Seth Jensen was, that's another aspect of us having to send
Right.
our waste or our sludge, and once the dryers are installed, we'll have less.
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with this.
We're not, we're only a registered we can't accept any sludge, period. Now, with the landfill, there was always a formula, a percentage of waste. You need at least, I think, if I remember correctly, I think it was 10%. I think it was 10 tons of sludge we could accept at the landfill for every 100 tons of garbage. I think that's what the ratio was. So, and you know, you have to be up on that, because if you get too much sludge in there, you can just imagine stability-wise. That's why landfills are shaped like a trapezoid, so they don't collapse or they don't leak out. You know, they're like this for a reason. So that was always a challenge.
So when the dryers are done, will they be hauling it directly from wastewater treatment plant, or is it gonna?
I don't know. You know, Seth and I have talked about possibilities of city staff hauling. I mean, there's no, I don't know what the end product is for the new process going on. I seriously doubt whether we could take it at the transfer station. That's just me not knowing what it is yet, but kind of knowing what it is. I don't think we'd be able to take it. But if we can, obviously that we would definitely look into it. Because Seth and I have talked about splitting the cost of trailers or more Class A drivers to haul that, so you wouldn't need a contractor. But it probably makes more sense now that that project's, you know, so important, and obviously it needed to be done, that then we can talk to see actually how it performs and see what's left.
Okay.
So that is a possibility, though. And we've talked about it, but it's just, we can't make that commitment yet without knowing what the product's going to be.
I was just thinking out loud.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you did. So, you know, I probably should have mentioned that it used to be, they used to bring sludge over to us when it was a landfill. Sludge you can't bring to a transfer station if it's classified as sludge. I don't know what this new byproduct's going to be classified as.
Yeah, I think it's less, it's more,
It's drier.
yeah, it's dry, and it's not in that realm where you
Right.
can send it to a special.
Yeah, but we are, believe me, we will look at every opportunity we have to, you know, save everyone $1 if we can.
Thanks.
It makes sense, it really does, if we could do that, but right now we're not set up for it. Our trailers wouldn't dump it. We have what's called walking floor trailers, or live, some people call them live floors, so it's like they shake, and there's a little conveyor belt that draws the garbage out, so you can't do that with that kind of stuff. So, and this is just a recap of where we are at the solid waste fund right now. Remember, we did an increase, I believe, was it last year, Mary Beth? It was last year. So, and this is what they currently are right now. What I don't have, and I apologize because it was such a short time frame for Mary Beth and I to get together and come up with even this kind of cursory initial budget, I guess, review, but what I have to do is get a better handle on how many residential properties we have and how many of these. Because I'll be perfectly honest with you, I'm sure, and I'm not saying they're doing it to try to circumvent anything, but I'm sure there's people not paying for our garbage collection service and we still pick it up. And that's not because they just probably don't know, and we don't know. Our people down there don't know, looking at a house, if they pay for the refuse collection fee. Or for some reason, if the house is tax exempt, looks just like everyone else's house, but if it's owned by a church or owned by a nonprofit, they need to be paying for the service. So sometimes there's a disconnect there, but I think we're pretty good, Jeremy, and that's something we're really gonna have to seriously look at. Or when a property owner is renovating one of their units, comes in here, I say in here, to somewhere in City Hall to try to reason, hey, that apartment's empty, I don't want to pay that $276 for it. I think sometimes it's granted, but that person hopefully comes back and says, all right, I rented it out, but that rarely happens, I think. So, you know, I have my own views on what I think we should do, but I think everyone should pay, and there should be no, I mean, if you have a vacant apartment, well, you're still paying for it, because unless we have some kind of foolproof method of knowing when someone moves in, which I don't think it exists right now, you know, somebody's getting something for free. So, does anyone have any questions on This isn't to make any decisions, this is just to keep everybody informed as we come into budget time and we refer to certain things, this is what we're referring to.
Mike, you mentioned we do accept refuse from outside haulers.
Yes.
Out of the 12,500 tons that we're allowed a year, how much of that is outside haulers? Do you know?
Let's see, hold on a second, I can tell you exactly. And it's only 2 contractors. And we charge them, that's going to be one thing we are going to increase. They pay $80 a ton to come dump at our place. So, all right, this is for 2024. We're allowed 12,500 tons. We're registered for that. We can't go 12,501. We have to stop. Now, we took in 10,155 tons total. Our curbside collection was roughly around 8,400 tons. Residents bringing in garbage was 54 tons. County residents coming in was about 250 tons. And then, downtown bid, that was 5.5 tons. Animal control, which is dead deer or dead dogs, that was 4.5 tons. 34 tons from Casey and Falcon Park. And this all we break it out like this because on our annual report, I have to report where this waste is coming from. That's why, in city departments, so this is 75 tons are from any city department that brings waste down there. So you're talking sewage treatment plant, filter plant, public works, Casey Park. They use the dumpster usually. Codes, anybody who brings stuff in, it goes in that category. So I'm finally getting to answer your question. So one contractor brought in 1,200 tons, and the other one, a very small local one, brought in 122 tons. So, we had some, so really 2,400 tons went unused. I hate to say unused, but it's really tough. It was much more difficult when we owned a landfill, because what happens is, everybody's permitted for different amounts. If you're a landfill that has a very high limit, and you're getting to November and you're not there yet, you can drop your rates and get that garbage in. On the contrary, and this is what we've had to do because we were a small landfill, if you come to November and you're starting to inch up towards your capacity, you start shedding tons, telling people they can't come in, which is not a popular thing. I mean, I've been, threatened and yelled at and screamed at, telling these contractors, sorry, we don't have room for you. We got room for our residents, we don't have room for you. So it goes both ways. But there was some capacity this year, but at $80 a ton, it probably didn't make sense to sell that towards the end, because we're paying 43, we have to pay to get it, we have to handle it, we have to bring it over, we have to drive back. So, but that's, I think, where Mary Beth and I will discuss a contractor rate. So, because there are advantages, just like when we operate a landfill. People like coming to us because it's easy in, easy out. Plus everyone smiles all the time down there. So we know how to treat people. We don't mess with people. We know people are busy. They come in, get rid of their stuff, reweigh, pay, and then they leave. So pretty simple strategy. But garbage, garbage is there's a whole science to it. Any more questions? Well, there's another form right there. Now, Mary Beth, can you kind of fill in these next slides? Just let me know when you want me to change the slide.
Okay. So I just wanted to share with council kind of where we are in our borrowing for this fund. So I talked to Mike. We have Christina Selvik and I have met to talk about what's in the short-term borrowing that we would push into long-term this year. Last year, our bond council didn't recommend putting anything into long-term because the rates were high. We have to, at this point, move anything from 2019 and 2020 into long-term. We don't have a choice anymore. Hopefully the rates are gonna be good come August when we're ready to do that. So the ones with the asterisks, those will go into long-term this year. what I've talked to Mike about is making sure that when we move these into long-term, that we set the maturity appropriately, so those refuse packers, making sure they're paid off before the end of their useful life. Same thing with those solid waste vehicles. Mike talked about the stuff that we purchased in 2020 for the transfer station, making sure that that's paid off in time, so that if we have to borrow again for new equipment, we're not starting in the negative. So he and I will work through with Christina Selvig kind of a plan to transition that to long-term. We don't have a lot in long-term for this fund, but the big piece is gonna be when we move those closure costs over to long-term debt. So, you know, we continue to pay principal on them when they're in short-term, but we're still gonna have to move a fairly large chunk over to long-term. And I think right now, you know, Christina and I will be setting up meetings with our bond counsel so that we can talk about, you know, does it make sense right now to move that 4.2 over to long-term? So I think we can go to the next slide unless anybody has any questions.
What about that?
And then I just wanted to kind of give the overall picture of this fund. It's not super happy news, but fund balance is negative at the end of the year, and I just want to explain that a little bit. So the way that this works, it's what we call a proprietary fund. It's handled totally different than any other governmental fund. So we have to back out all of the assets and the depreciation. So any equipment and stuff that we purchase gets backed out, and it tends to push fund balance negative. So don't be super alarmed by that. What I am concerned about is the net operating loss for 2024. So we had a net operating loss of 1.3 million. Now part of that is depreciation, and that's a paper expense. So it's not all cash lost, but still significant. We did a rate increase for this fiscal year, so that offsets some of it. What I get concerned about is cash flow in this fund, because the general fund has to loan money at the end of each year to cover the cash flow until the next tax levy comes in. So I looked at cash in preparation for this presentation, because this fund gets its property tax revenue in July, and then it doesn't really get a ton of revenue in for the rest of the year. So there's not gonna be a lot of cash inflow. So I anticipate that by the end of this fiscal year, general fund's gonna be loaning it money again. That's concerning to me, and that's why I felt like we had to put some of these numbers in there. You know, I think we've also looked at the Packers, and Mike certainly could speak more to this, but I anticipate that we're gonna have to, like, you know, that 2013 Packer's gonna have to be replaced at some point. So I anticipate that we're gonna have to purchase some more equipment. And so I just want council to be aware of where we are on this, because we're really gonna have to look at this fund.
Yes, Ms. Leeson, I was wondering, Mr. Talbot mentioned that there may be some people that aren't paying the fee. Do we have an idea of how many possibly aren't paying the fee, and that might shore up some of the
There's not a lot. So as part of the budget process last year, the city treasurer and I sat down and went through the list of exclusions. We've communicated those lists of exclusions. The problem is that, you know, if you apply for an exclusion, it's for the whole year. So somebody might be at this point who's an excluded property now renting again, and they wouldn't pay for this year, they'll pay for next year.
But the next year they'll be on the.
So the city policy is actually that you have to apply for the exclusion every year. We had not been super strict in enforcing that. I am at this point. So residents, if they want to be excluded from the fee, have to annually file for the exclusion and get approved. There's always a flurry. We have exclusions ahead of time, and then there's always a flurry after the tax bills are issued of people saying, whoa, wait a minute, I don't have tax collection, and so we have to adjust the bills. So that's why you'll see on that revenue slide we were a few $1,000s under, because we had those people contact us, and it came off the tax bills. But the list is not super long, but we do try to keep on top of it so that, you know, everybody's paying their fair share.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, I think that's it for me. I don't know if anybody has any other questions for Mike.
That was it, 2 slides?
Yeah, easy peasy.
Any additional questions? Thank you both.
Thank you.
Other business from the council? Hearing none. Mr. Duggar, do we have a request for executive session?
I do not.
Council, request for executive session? I can't hear you. I'm sorry. All right, very good. We have a sponsor for executive session. Councilor Clarko, second by Councilor Kent. Please call the roll.
Motion for executive session at 5:46 PM. Counselor Kent?
Yes.
Counselor Overstreet Wilson?
Yes.
Counselor Cuddy?
Yes.
Counselor Clarko?
Aye.
Mayor Jimmy Giannettino.
Aye, we'll be in recess for executive session. And just a reminder, we will not meet next week. We'll be back February 6th.